Did you think it was possible for a player to have 10 scores in a match off their own boot and still not feel like he completely dominated his matchup? Well, look no further than the weird nature of Charlie Curnow's performance against the Bulldogs. And today, amidst a block of form which hasn't been all that convincing, we break down the curious case of Charlie Curnow. If you do go on to enjoy this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, so you can remain tuned for the next iteration of Carlton analysis next week. And if you'd like to become a channel member and support financially, there is a join button down below. Enjoy. The easy thing to take a pot shot at for Charlie's performance on the weekend was the inaccuracy. However, we're looking to stretch beyond that very fact. To gauge how responsible Charlie is for his output, we need to answer the following questions. What was the nature of his scores? Does the delivery to Charlie suffice? What is Charlie doing in marking contests? And what is Charlie doing once the ball hits the ground? Now, to answer the first point, this is a map of where Charlie got his scores from. Now, to answer questions 2 and 3, let's first eliminate the close shots at goal. The ones in the goal square, I believe, was off the back of a last-ditch effort. Charlie's not to blame. 2 goals from transition play and stoppage, and then a shot in the pocket, which is difficult to execute. It's the ones further out which are troubling. Earlier on in the season, this stat arose and its trend has continued. Inside 40 meters, Charlie was lethal. Outside that range, he was diabolical. What occurred upfield and what was happening in close proximity to Charlie kept him in this range from goal rather than this range, more often than not on the weekend. Charlie has been delivering on expected output for set shots and far exceeding it in open play. So odds are, if you can play to his weakness from set shots and maintain the difficulty on the open play looks he's getting, but tack on a higher level of pressure, that high efficiency output Charlie's been having will lower. And I feel that's how the Dogs got a proper stranglehold on Curnow this past weekend and affected his output. Charlie consistently found himself in a number of tussles off the back of ineffective stoppage clearances and slow play up the line. Look no further than Carlton's massive number of possessions providing little advantage in scores and inside 50s in the opening quarter. And Vossi reinforces this.
There was enough turnovers in the back half, so when we had our opportunities to go back the other way, it was we weren't probably as good as what we needed to be. We're probably not giving enough credit to the Dogs here as well. They clearly dialed up their defense from last week.
Carlton couldn't get much bang for their buck off stoppages, which correlated with a lack of connection to Charlie Curnow. And this is obviously where Carlton becomes stronger the more enhanced that connection is. That aside, close range goals of his come from Carlton's forward half pressure and transition play, where Curnow's most likely to be isolated as the deepest forward, or he pushes higher up the ground and bolts back to goal when the ball's got venom. However, with the slow play Carlton were forced into, these instances were few and far between. Curnow's possessions were barren early, and coming up the ground sent him further away from his most potent and accurate scoring zone, even though at times he may have been involved in chains to get Carlton forward 50 access. Aside from the Bulldogs placing a stranglehold on Curnow, some of Curnow's struggles may be more internalized. The 6 weeks prior to this game, Charlie had kicked 4 goals from being a marking target going inside 50 57 times, an 8% conversion. In my view, this is what it comes down to. Is the quality of delivery adequate? Which obviously would dictate whether or not Charlie's strong positioning turns into awful positioning. And is Charlie Curnow doing enough off the ball to elevate his chances of conversion? Charlie did have opportunities through having 6 marks inside 50 and a lump of set shots, which he was 1 goal 4 from, which would indicate the issues are off his own boot. But these 2 questions come into the picture when you see Buku Khamis and his 8 intercept possessions, the larger share of his disposals on the day. Is it Charlie or is it his teammates let's get to the bottom of this. Let's take this for example. Now, I get what Carlton are going for. Bomb inside 50, get your forwards to create a contest aerially, clamp it in, reset, go again. But some thought wouldn't go astray. The kick lands a bit shallower, and this front position spot Charlie is occupying is the best place to be. But anything projected to land here or back, and Charlie's heavily disadvantaged. So much so, he disengages hoping for something to go out back, and it nestles into the hands of Khamis. So that's an entry problem, and you see it plenty of times during the game. It's not just an execution thing, it's a decision-making thing. Charlie is on the open side, which is perfect, having seen Carlton's move in that diagonal pathway. All that Walsh needs to do is lay it off to Kennedy, and then Charlie is favoured with Kennedy going along that same path. But it is an up and under kick down the line that has me clueless as to where Walshy wanted to go. You'll see what a good attacking kick can do. Khamis is programmed to think Carlton are going down the line because, well, it's happened the entire quarter practically, and would be like what we saw with the Walsh example moments ago. But the kick has not only favoured Curnow, but it's also bypassed the Bulldogs' extra man, and it opens the entire ground up and mitigates the impact of that Bulldogs plan. I think this sums up Charlie getting involved higher up the ground, as we've briefly mentioned. Charlie actually leads up from this kick in, then heads further downfield for a down the line kick. The kick sits on Charlie's head and Lobb can knock him further under it, but because of where deconing began, that's how he could soar over the rest. They actually seemed to have doubled Charlie Curnow with Khamis and Lobb both present. Fraser is behind the ball with Mackay obviously taking the grab, but see, Curnow wasn't an optimal option up the ground. He wasn't optimized to take a grab in the center of the ground, and with Mackay wanting to move it quickly, Carlton didn't have a focal point in the deepest part of the ground. I'm not sure if Harry was deterred by the lack of focal point or the fact he swung round onto his dominant side with a dog ready to smother it, the guy who ultimately tackles him. But I imagine that is the effectiveness of the plan at play to completely remove Charlie from the high impact zone. This goes back to Carlton lacking effective clearances. There was a stat that read Carlton's stoppage scores were significantly lopsided according to who Carlton's ruck was, but I tell you what, Pitto was not helped with kicks to Charlie, Williams, whoever, with kicks like these that overshoot both players leading at the ball. And this has to be the biggest pet peeve of mine, when Charlie calls for the ball playing behind the defender. Unfortunately, we don't have an entire team of capable ball users who can clear the defender and get Charlie to use his body, or have the accuracy to perfectly telegraph it for Charlie to leap over the top the majority of the time. Buku Khamis, given always is leading, is essentially that second intercept defender they liked to help beat Charlie. Why can't we see always be a roadblock as Curnow turns sharply to attack a more centralized position and expose Khamis one-on-one? I'm no coach, but I just think there needs to be more innovation, and it feels a bit lazy because we were never kicking to a small forward on a down the line kick, were we? And many times where Always was playing off Charlie, it would become a 2v1 with always a non-factor. We see him do this sort of thing in abundance, and it makes me consistently wonder why. I don't blame the kicker on this example because it favors Charlie's right, and he keeps Buku out of reach. But he's running to the boundary long before the ball's even kicked, though I get you're attacking the space. The wider Charlie runs, the easier it is for Khamis to fence it off. Plenty of time for Khamis to reassess, step back, re-engage with Curnow, and make it tougher for him to collect the mark. Surely there's more variety for Charlie over a bit of a half-assed straight line run, which is pretty submissive to what the defender wants. Maybe cut inside to try lead directly at Sard, and if that's impeded, fight over it. Charlie loves a wrestle in a marking contest, so why not do the hard work beforehand to get an easier look? And equally, you make it a little bit clearer and more definitive for the kicker. that stat talking about a low conversion from being a heavy target inside 50, adding some variety would elevate that excessively higher in my eyes. I couldn't help but do one more. Why would you point further away from the side that favors acres, neglect all the space in front of you, and sandwich yourself between the opponent and the goal line? Try change direction and run through him. You also need Harry leading up at the ball as well, just to clear some space up in front. Buku can't cover all this space and anticipate either side of him. Get beside him, duck and change directions, get in front of him, try discard him. They say a kick inside 5 meters to goal from around this distance is a cardinal sin. In other words, if you can't make the distance from there, sit it up probably 10 to 15 meters out. Basically because it's an easy rushed behind for the opposition. Of all players, we're backing Blake Acres in for kicking accuracy with all this considered. Look, I very rarely see Charlie challenged in this way. It's always from the perspective of it being a delivery problem, but this is just my personal view. We still have one other element to dissect from our 4 points of today. What is Charlie doing when the ball hits the ground? Now, the common discourse is if a player exits the back 50 easily and Charlie's in the vicinity, it's down to laziness. Is this harsh? Well, here's my stance. If Charlie Curnow is supported, then the impact elevates. If Charlie's outnumbered, it's a lot to ask of a key forward who for him is a secondary or tertiary role of his. Now, in amateur level footy, there's a training drill where there's 4 cones arranged in a square and a man on each, and a man in the middle pursuing the ball carrier. On the outside, you can only handball to the cone beside you. On the outside, you cannot skip cones when you're handballing it off. You have to go to the cone next to you. This drill is designed to make the one in the middle run and pressure. And in doing so, you're consistently anticipating a pass ahead. And sometimes this has you leaving the ball carrier open. That mistake can be mistaken from afar as a lack of effort, potentially. Sometimes Charlie is guilty of laziness, but I could pick moments for all players. And I feel Carlton supporters may get caught up in Charlie not winning the ball back, so much so that they may blind themselves to this sort of situation. So this is a visualization of what people want from Charlie, I imagine. The ball is perfectly placed for Jamara to run in a straight line to hit the ball and knock it on to a player who's in the firing line, and so he can apply the tackle. But this is the support I'm referring to. 3 Bulldogs players close in on Wiedering, and with an affected handball and the congestion not cleared, Marchbank is inclined to think he's got to belt the ball clear without carrying the ball one step, especially with McRae blocking the open side. It becomes something you can anticipate. Carlton are disadvantaged player-wise, and so then you can impact and lessen the gap. On this example, even though Charlie's on the back foot because he's cherry picking at the back and Khamis is ready to intercept, we're talking ground level stuff. Charlie won't get a tackle, but he's had an impact because he's forced Dale to have to overcome the first line of fire and evade, but right into Chincotta, who will get the tackle, the goal, and the praise. If it's just Charlie in the vicinity, in comes the laziness argument, not strong in the tackle, etc. Dale feels less under duress, and breaking free of Charlie's tackle allows Dale to use numbers either side to feed his own run or back 50 exit from someone else. That's a piece of why playing forward half football is important, as this goal comes from a forward half turnover. Carlton midfielders and forwards aren't required to exert energy running forward to provide support as you would with a defensive half game because they're already down there. This example is sort of like the drill I was talking about. You can close down the ball carrier or get in the path, but you're outnumbered in a 2-on-1 situation. You either anticipate or you commit. Commit and you leave the entry to the outside open. Anticipate and you leave the exit open. This indecision has been created because of the Dogs getting mids and forwards alike pushing back and adding extra plays that give them the advantage. Playing the clip in full speed, Charlie has milliseconds to decide anyway. Maybe the chase could be better, but Charlie's got to exert a fair bit of energy in other facets of the game, so maybe it's a matter of preservation? You decide. Here's one more. The Dogs have the support. Charlie opts to anticipate as opposed to committing, and it's the right call. Back the smalls to compress. Chincotta needs to roll around with Dale, and Charlie protects the switch. And because of that support, Carlton can go again back inside 50. It's a team sport, and you saw every player do their role here, tracking runners on both sides, some on their more direct man than others. Most often, defenders will outweigh attackers by design. It takes a wealthy attacking presence to force tackles. Charlie is 100% a part of that. Does he need to improve in this area? Yes. Does it require assistance for that to happen? Also yes. Thing to note, remember the previous points we've mentioned. If these points improve, we may be talking about a higher mark conversion as opposed to Charlie and other players needing to chase the opposition down. Carlton love transition, and that helps Curnow, as we've said. But that means an open forward 50, and if Charlie isn't marking and the opposition are possessing, that's a lot of space to marshal and cover for Charlie with support, let alone without. So look, Charlie Curnow's a really interesting case. In the same way, he had the most shots on the ground but seemed to play a subpar game. Curnow leads the Coleman despite not having the greatest of seasons. Charlie's improvement for me comes from his own self and from others, both up the ground and from the surrounding pieces inside 50. But what's your perspective? If I've missed something, make sure to share it in the comments to provide a fresh take. If you think I'm wrong, provide a counter argument. Regardless, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Can't wait to do it all over again next week. But until then, stay safe, have a good one, and bye for now.